before I introduce the speaker, I want to talk about our trip to the Capitol yesterday. I've had a few people want to know how it went over. Well, there were 25 of us, and I would say it was a great success. There are quite a few here that were with us yesterday. It was fun. All right, good. We had a little difficulty at the end of the day finding Gallego's office and Senator Kelly's office. They moved, but we found the address. Where there's a will, there's a way. And so we were able to make it to the offices. And the staff greeted us, and we gave them some letters. But before that, Rosanna Galdon greeted us right away once we got to the Capitol. Her first gesture was to show us where the restrooms were. Much appreciated. But then she did give us a wonderful tour. We went into the Rose Garden. George had some comments to make. I told her, I don't have any comments, I've just got some questions. And so I rattled them off, and she said, well, I'll answer them. We went off to the Senate building and sat in a conference room where they had iced tea and cold water for us. It was greatly appreciated as well. Anyhow, bing to bing to bing to bing, she answered every single question I had on that list without hesitation. And they were all good answers. From there, she showed us into the Senate chambers, and then we went across the courtyard to the Republican chambers. It was just a great day. It was. Then we had to eat our lunch on the bus because we knew we were running late. Rosanna is much like me. It's hard to shut her up. So we ran a little late, but we were so pleased. She was just an excellent hostess. So now, before I introduce, as the Green Valley Club knows, I like to always tell a little story. So here's my story for today. When my husband and I hosted dinner parties, and I still do on my own, we would interrupt the chatter at the table and tell them, we got one question for you to answer. Each of you gets a chance. So sometimes one of them was, what's your favorite car? Does anybody want to guess which one came up most frequently? A Chevy pickup. Well, that's pretty good. Actually, it wasn't Chevy. It was the '57 Chevy Impala. I heard that one more than once. Then we'd ask, who was your favorite president? Well, Abe was certainly among the list. Obama. Let's see, Ike. It was never Hoover. But then we'd ask, oh, I forgot to tell you about the cars. When it came to my turn to answer, mine was always determined by, well, you're talking the front seat or the back seat? So anyhow, one of the questions that sometimes would generate some emotions was, who was your favorite teacher? And they all had a favorite teacher. Most of them were elementary, then high school. There were two that said college professors had made the difference for them. But it was always, everybody got quiet and thought about it. You could tell that whatever this teacher was, it had made an impact. So my favorite teacher was an English teacher in my junior year. Not only was she an excellent English teacher, she was our debate coach and our speech coach. What can I say? She influenced me a lot. Okay, Shelley, I have a few words to tell about you. Shelley Hartman is our speaker this afternoon. She's a Pima County Community Action Team Coordinator. That's a tough one. Yeah. She's a retired educator who spent 32 years working and fighting for the public schools, spending most of her career in the Title I low-income public schools. Shelley, come on up.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Who's your favorite teacher?
My favorite teacher was named Sherry Baca. She was my 8th grade math teacher, and she helped me through a lot. 8th grade, very traumatic. And she helped me through a lot. And then one time when I was a teacher, I was at a conference, And there she was still teaching, and we met up, and it was amazing. I was like, oh, she was like, oh, I'm so old, but now I get that. So I want to thank everybody for inviting us here. We at Save Our Schools love to come out and educate people because there's a lot of misinformation about what's going on, and it could end up really hurting our public schools. So what my goal for today is to inform you of what's going on at the state level and the national level, and give you some thinking points that when you come across people that don't understand what's going on, you can give them some facts. So that's my goal for today. As Sandy told you, I was a public education teacher for many years, and I ended my career as a principal in the Glendale Elementary School District, and I was one for 5 years. I really wanted to just stay being an assistant principal because I didn't want to be a principal because, and my superintendent came and said, I got this school, I need somebody to change it around. And I said, I'll give you 5 years because I'm retiring after that. And so I did. I gave my whole heart to that school. So you're going to hear me refer to my school a lot, but because that's the reason I'm here, is because of Isaac Hines Elementary, which currently is no longer a school because it was shut down 5 years ago. So anyway, you'll hear me talk about that. So, all right. So we're going to talk about what a community action team is. We're going to talk about the war that is currently on public education, and we're really going to hit what the impacts of the vouchers are because that is where the misinformation comes from. And we're going to talk about the national level with the Project 2025 that the administration said they were never going to follow, but they are currently following lockstep, and that includes impacts on the Department of Ed and what we can do about it. Again, don't get your hopes up. It's not like I'm going to have the magic cure of everybody saying, what do we do about it? My goal is to give you talking points because we can educate people. That's what we need to be doing, is educating people. Save Our Schools came about from 6 parents and teachers who were frustrated with the public funding situation that was going on in 2017 with Arizona. And as a teacher forever in Arizona since 1984, we've always had a crisis in funding, okay? We've always had problems with that. So in 2017, this group of teachers and parents came together and they decided to start fighting legislation. They started seeing some legislation coming forward that they didn't like, that had to do with funding. That was when the vouchers came in, and so they got together to start this nonpartisan program. So that's who Save Our Schools is. And we have regional community action teams. And we call them CAT teams. And so if any of you, I know some of you are on the newsletter I send out for Pima County, you'll see we say Pima Cats, and that's what CATS means, is Community Action Team. And I am the coordinator for Pima County, and so I get my information from the ladies above who are my directors and everything, and then I disseminate it out here, and then I try to get events and things going in Pima County. So I inform Pima County, and we have regional CATs all over Arizona. So some of you guys know Mary Darling, she's the CAT leader down in Cochise and Santa Cruz and those areas, and we had a big argument over the Green Valley ones, but Pima got it, so I'm here. We didn't have argument. She's very busy down there, so I said, I'll take the Green Valley. And we don't have a lot in the northern Arizona communities yet, but we have somebody who kind of watches that and knows a lot of people that can kind of get the message out. But in Phoenix, there's at least 12 other people that go in every region of Phoenix. So we have all those CAT teams. And We advocate for strong public schools. We will go help school boards if they are, if things are happening. Currently in Phoenix, there's like red alarms going off and schools are closing minute by minute. And so the PAC teams are all going down to board meetings and trying to fight the school closures and doing all that. And here in Pima County, we don't have anything like that going yet. So, but we watch, we listen, and we're there. We support pro-public candidates for legislature, for school board, and that kind of thing. And we're educating. That's what we're trying to get done. We do it because every child deserves a public education, quality education. Public schools are free and they offer so much for our families. At Ines, I was in a small community. Ines was the smallest school in Glendale, and we were Title I. Glendale was Title I, the whole entire district. A Title I school is a school that gets extra funding for if you have 85% or more students who are free and reduced lunch. So it's for low-income students who get extra funding for the Title I. And we also got grants and things like that from the community. I had a clinic at my school. I had free lunch and breakfast for everybody in my community. In the summertime, we sponsored free breakfast and lunch for our kids to come, so they would come free because that sometimes was the only meals that they were getting. And so Isaac Ines was really a part of the community, and it had been there it was one of the oldest schools in Glendale and been there 75 years. And my secretary, who was older than I am, she went there. So she was a student at Ines. Her children were a student at Ines. And I had children that when I was there that great-grandparents had gone to Ines. So it was a very strong community. And when it was closing, we had many community members come out and try to stop it. When there's no money, there's no money. So that's why we do it. We want to keep our public schools running. So we call it a war because we want you to understand that it is a war. It's a not personal, but it's an attack on public schools. And it's direct. And it's not, we thought that this would happen. No, they knew exactly what was happening, and it is targeted, and it is to dismantle public education. That's the only reason. So right now, in Arizona, we are 49th in the country for funding. We have the second most crowded classroom sizes, which is very impactful in the classroom. And we are bottom 5 of teacher salary. And as the principal of the school, I went on several recruiting trips, and it was very difficult to get people. They knew our salaries were not competitive, and they're not even competitive. They're just low. And I just saw an article where teachers are now in Arizona saying, I can't even buy a house. I can't even live on a teacher salary. And the student counselor ratio is the second worst. The ratio is, never remember, 1 in 250 is the national. We are 1 in 650. So obviously we don't have a lot of school counselors out there. And then our school facilities are $3 billion in the hole. Like, we don't have that money. It's just not there. Okay? So we are in a bad state. It's not good right now, and it's just getting worse. So here's the biggest problem right now is the voucher system. So what's a voucher? Well, it is. It's a mechanism to move public money into private funds. Okay? It is a direct attack to get schools privatized. That is the goal. Okay? The biggest, and if you walk out of here knowing anything at all, this is what I want you to walk out here with, that it is not, vouchers are not about school choice. Okay? You're going to hear that all over the place. It is not about school choice. It is about privatization of our schools, our public schools. Arizona already has school choice, okay? Every child, every parent can put their child in a public school, a private school, a charter school, a home school, a micro school. You have the choice to do that. So every child has that choice. So vouchers are not about school choice. They don't do anything about school choice, okay? The ESA voucher is what we're going to talk a lot about right now. So I'll tell you, an STO voucher is a tax credit for private schools, and that is funded by donations. So that's what the original voucher system would give some tax credits to kids who couldn't maybe afford to go to private schools. Their parents might get tax credits to do that. And so an STO voucher is not, because it's funded by donations. The ESA vouchers, they're public taxpayer money that is used directly to put children in private schools. All right, so the problem with that and the impact of that is that, well, I'll talk about the playbook in a minute. The problem with the voucher system is that 90% of the children who are the parents who get voucher money right now already had their children in private schools. So they could afford to put their children in private schools. And now we, the taxpayers, are giving those people our money to put their kids in private schools. So that's the problem, okay, is that there is no oversight on a voucher. That's why they're called a universal voucher. Everybody can apply for one. Everybody can get one. In the old days, when I was a teacher, in the old days, the voucher systems were used for our special needs students, okay, and you will hear that a lot too. Well, what about the special needs? We don't want vouchers to go away. Well, Save Our Schools does not want vouchers to go away either, okay? We want universal vouchers to go away, but we want vouchers for our special needs kids who need to go into special schools because the districts can't do what they need for them. That's what vouchers are supposed to be for. So in Arizona, we are currently the only state that does this. We are not currently the only state. There's a lot of states that are trying to do what we're doing, and they're getting a little more pushback than we got. So 1998 was when the first tax credit vouchers were passed, and that was where they were, you gave a donation. You could say, I'm giving this donation, and you would get full tax credit. So if you gave a $400 donation, you would get $400 on your tax. And that money would go for private schools. I used tax credit at my schools, and it funded after-school programs. It funded all kinds of stuff. So those vouchers are excellent. And then in 2009, they said, oh, yeah, those are unconstitutional. So they were like, we're getting rid of those. And then in 2011, they were like, okay, we're going to have these ESAs for the disability kids. And those were just little stepping stones to get to where we are today. And then for the next 10 years, they expanded the vouchers, and they kept playing around with them, and the districts were like, oh, what are we doing here? What's going on? And then finally, they put it on 2018, an initiative went on the ballot. Okay, and that was where Save Our Schools kind of started, was to get that initiative on the ballot. And we voted 2-1 down. Arizona voters voted vouchers down 2-1. And then the legislator said, yeah, kind of like what they're doing with Prop 139 right now. Like, you didn't know what you were voting for. You didn't really want that. So they put in legislation, and it passed to get the universal vouchers that we have today. And those started in 2022. So this is one of my favorite slides from our presentation. So I'm going to let you guys kind of look at that. That is of how the funding has increased since 2012. So you can see that we are currently, from last year, are at the $1 billion mark. So $1 billion of the state money, public school money, is going for vouchers. 1 billion, okay? 1 out of every $10 in the K-12 budget goes to a voucher. So that's 10% of our money goes to vouchers. And it's just continuing to grow because there's no oversight on it. There's nobody's watching it, and we just continue to do that. And the other thing that's really important to know is that when they don't have the money in the education budget to fund the vouchers, then they take it out of the other budgets. So public safety has been hit because of vouchers. Other programs in Arizona have been hit, and we are currently going into a deficit in our state budget because of vouchers. Okay? So those are the things that you have to really understand, is that it's not about school choice. You can see that here. Okay? The other argument that they will use, the people that are pro-vouchers will say, well, low-income students get to go to private schools. That's wonderful. But low-income students don't go to private schools, okay? Because low-income students need clinics at their schools, they need food for their schools, they need transportation for their schools, everything that their public school gives them. And even if some of my parents were given all the full money to go to the Catholic school in our neighborhood, though there wasn't one in our neighborhood, but in the district, they wouldn't be able to do it, okay? And plus, once you get there, with the tuition, it's paid, but you still have to pay for uniforms, you still have to pay for outside costs, and there's so many costs that go in there. So low-income students are not using the vouchers, okay? 90% of the people using the vouchers already can afford to put their children in private school. So that money is going in Paradise Valley, it's going in Scottsdale. Those are the people who are putting their kids, not low income. So when you hear that, but low-income kids are going to get to go to, and I heard a Republican state legislature say those words out of her mouth, saying, look, it's so wonderful, it's helping the low-income students. She said that recently, less than a month ago, and that it's not true, okay, they're not going. So this is an important slide to remember, is that we are currently $1 billion going to vouchers, not to public schools, okay? So vouchers hurt them, and I told you the one in everything. You can't, the money that $1 billion is going, we can't do teacher pay raises, we can't fix the buildings, we can't lower the class sizes, we don't have the money because it's all going to vouchers, okay? And it's also private schools, and we're going to talk a little bit about this in the coming slides, but it doesn't just go for private schools. There's other horrific things that the money is going for. Okay, so here's a couple of the things that happen. They have to cut school bus routes, and you know, I lived in Flagstaff when I was in first grade, and I had to ride a bus for a long, long time. I don't know how people would be able to get their kids if they didn't have the bus. They're just gone because there's no money for buses, so they have to cut somewhere. So they cut the bus routes. And we use this slide to show you that this is real, okay? This is in the news, this is a real fact. School buses are being cut. My grandson was in Peoria, and he had just moved into the district, and he was excited to go to the first day of school, and 3 days before they were like, yeah, we're not going to be able to get that bus there. And my daughter is a single mom. She lives in Phoenix and I live here. And she was like, what do I do, Mom? How am I getting to school? And it was a mess. It was a mess. Just for that. And they were like, it's temporary, but right now we just can't afford to do it. And that was in Peoria, the Unified School District, and that impacted me. That's a real story that impacted my grandson. Dysart had to get rid of all their social workers, so they have no counselors, no social workers in their schools. And as a person that worked in low-income schools my whole career, social workers are so important in our work because a lot of these kids don't know how to acclimate into schools. And one of my favorite things is I did a big Latino population in my school. And the moms are stay-at-home moms, and they don't go to preschool, and they don't go, out to daycare and stuff. They're at home, and when they come to school, they're completely traumatized because their mom is no longer there, and they're with all these people, and most of the time their teacher's speaking English, which they don't know how to speak. Okay, so kindergarten was a trauma day for us on the first day of school. But my social workers are there, and they bring the kids in, teach them how to be in school. Here's how we raise our hand. This is what they do. Okay. When you don't have them, then that helps. And Dysart has a huge refugee population, and so not to have social workers for them is devastating. Teacher salaries. After COVID, the schools were like getting extra money from the COVID relief fund, and so that helped do teachers, social workers, lower class sizes, while the vouchers are still stealing all the public money, but that money's leaving, it's over. Okay, so now we're dropping down even more. Paradise Valley is getting ready to close schools, Roosevelt's closing schools, Phoenix L is closing schools. And the school closures are, now my school closure was not a direct result of vouchers, it was a direct result of charter schools because my kids were being siphoned off to go to charter schools. Charter schools are technically public schools, so we don't consider them in the same category as a private school, but they do affect public monies in a way, so it's really complicated. So we don't say we hate charter schools, but we don't love them either because they can affect. But all these school closures that are happening right now, next year, Phoenix L is going to close 5 schools. Those are all because of vouchers. And we're hearing rumors in Pima County that Tucson is going to have to probably close. Tucson Unified, Amphi is thinking, and Catalina Foothills, those are the rumors right now, that now, it takes a while to close a school, so it's not going to happen next year. But if they're talking now, that means it'll be in the next couple of years. See that here in Pima. So these are the people who love vouchers and support vouchers and do everything that we can. I'm sure you've all heard of them. ALEC is a big sponsor of the voucher program. They are the ones that all these people have something to do with Project 2025, and so vouchers are a definite target. They're targeting public schools. It's all been about that.
Can we understand why they don't like public schools? Can we start with that?
Well, because they want it to be privatized. Because they want to have their own agendas in the schools. They don't want to have like a state curriculum and all of that. They want it to just be there and have to be privatized so money is. Yeah.
It's why? Because segregation had a lot to do with it.
They
Segregation. They don't want to fund. It's great.
So who are benefiting? High-income families, those who are already in private schools, suburban households. Vouchers are devastating to rural communities because they don't even have private schools there, and all the monies are being taken out of there. And and private schools can also like get rid of children. They can say, we don't actually want you here, so you have to leave. Whereas a public school doesn't, we don't do that. We say, okay, we'll take you and we'll help you. So private schools are benefiting from that, because the voucher isn't about school choice, it's about the school having the choice of whether or not they want to keep the kids in or not. Okay. So along with all of the private schools, we also have pop-up schools. Those came about in COVID, and they're called micro schools or homeschooling. Also takes voucher money. And so in my neighborhood in Gladden Farms, I'm on the little message board, and I will see occasionally, somebody say, I am doing a homeschool, and I'm going to pull in your kids, and I'm going to be a micro school, and I'm going to teach them all about technology. And if you contact the state and get your voucher money, you can give it to me, and I will have a school, and then they get all the voucher money from the people. And so what fraudsters do is they say, I have this school, and I have all these children in the school, and I'm getting this, and there's no children. They're called ghost children. And Chris Mays did do an investigation, and there was a couple in Colorado who had 15 ghost children, and they received $110,000 of our taxpayer money, and they live in Colorado. They took the Arizona money. So there's all that. So you know if that's going on, there's more of that going on. People use voucher monies for chicken coops to have them in their backyards. They'll say, oh, I'm going to teach my kids about chicken coops. But if you look at homeschooling boards, a lot of times they'll say, did you guys use your money for chicken coops? Because that's really cool. I have all these chickens now and I get eggs. And they don't talk about education. They talk about having a chicken coop in their backyard. And $1 million of our public taxpayer money went to Legos, because they love to talk about Legos being educational. And so $1 million went to just funding Legos. So there is no oversight. There is no checks on where the money is going. If you keep your voucher request at $2,000, you can say anything, and they won't check you. They don't ask. They just give you the $2,000. Okay, above $2,000, they do have some forms and things that you have to go through, but it's not regulated. Tom Hortons, they don't, do. Sometimes they'll find stuff, but it's very rare. Chris Mays does keep on it as much as she can, but there's a lot of fraud going on out there. So that's the other thing, is that it's being abused because there is no guidelines. You don't have to have a certain income. You don't have to have a certain disability. You don't have to have anything. You can just say you're a pop-up school and you can get voucher money. Okay. Just to reiterate, there is zero accountability. Okay? Private schools can pick and choose their children. They're not required to serve students with disabilities or English language learners. I used to have my kids their kids would have IEPs for behavior issues, is generally why parents get mad, because they're getting contacted a lot by the school, and so they're like, I'm taking my kid to this charter school over here, and I would try and tell them that the charter school and the private school do not have to look at their IEPs. You don't have to follow them. Like in public school, if a child has an IEP, I have to follow it to the letter, okay, or I am in trouble. So it's regulated, and a private school can say, and a charter school can say, you don't fit in here. And my kids would come back. They would be back to me because they would be removed from the private and charter. They don't have to feed them. They don't have to have open meetings. They don't have to share how their finances are going. They're not required to follow state standards, testing, and I know my friend Catherine's going to talk to you a little bit about that and how it impacts that. And there's just zero safety oversight. So a charter school doesn't do fingerprint checks like at public schools. We have to go through fingerprint checks. So anybody could be teaching your child. Anybody who pops up a homeschool can be a felon, and you would not know, because there's no safety oversights. Okay? Prop 123 is in the current legislature right now, and it's kind of on hold. We don't really know what's going on with that money. That money that was when Red for Ed came around, and the unions stood up to the guy and said, let's go, we get some. And we all walked out, and he gave us some promises that he did not deliver on. But we did get Prop 123, and it's running out as the COVID money is running out, and so they're arguing about what's going to happen with that money, and they don't have a resolution at this time. And so Project 2025, what's going on at the national level? So the other thing I want you to walk out here knowing is that what is the Department of Education? Because you'll hear that. People will say, well, what does the Department of Education do? Schools are state-run and state-funded. That's true. They are state-run and they are state-funded, but they also get federal monies. And Arizona is in the top 5 that gets the most federal money. So when the Department of Ed disappears, then we are going to be hurting even more than losing Prop 123 money, COVID money, and already $3 billion. Don't forget, we're already $3 billion deficit in our budget. So you can see that the funding is a crisis. So in 2025, this is what they do. They discredit the public schools by calling them failing schools and using the testing system to say, see, your public education doesn't work, that our kids aren't being educated. They defund the public schools by using vouchers, and that's what they're doing in Arizona, and they dismantle the public education, again, with vouchers. That is a direct result of Project 2025. Arizona is the leader in that, and we had a lot of people who did Project 2025 that came in Arizona and started that. So we were the test case for, and currently there is a federal legislation called the ECCA, and it is the exact voucher program that they want to do on a national level. So again, that one's on hold right now, but it's there. They have the bill written, and they're just, getting ready to dismantle. So if we dismantle the Department of Public Education, they'll say, oh, you still get the money. So you do still get the money that comes from there, so Arizona would still get money, but the Department of Ed has restrictions on that money. They say, this amount of money is used for your special ed kids, this amount of money is used for your Title I for low-income kids, this amount of money, and it's very regulated, and you have to account for every dollar. So I was Title I, and part of my job as the principal was I had to say what every dollar went to. And the Title I fund saved my school, because if I didn't have those, I wouldn't have been able to have social workers and lower class sizes and things like that. So dismantling the Department of Ed would give no oversight to that money, and they already have said that 10% of the federal money would go to vouchers. Okay, so they'll take that money and they can put it wherever, and we've seen the state legislatures talk about our children with disabilities, and they don't care about the children with disabilities, so they're not going to put the money towards that. So that it is a direct result of Project 2025, and has been going on in Arizona since 2022. So that's where we are. So those are the things that they do. Department of Ed also does all the DEI, makes sure that children's rights are there. There will be no oversight over children's rights, and our Title I and special ed. That's what I told you about the federal bill. So what are we doing? So Save Our Schools is very active in watching the legislature to see what bills are going through. Currently in Arizona, the state legislature is mostly it's Republican, and they all have horrible bills that go through, and so there's not much we can do about them, except that we have Governor Hobbs, who is the veto, and she does veto a lot of the bills. So currently what they're trying to do is get new bills that have come through, and they're called the HCR ones. I think they're HCR, and those are the ones that cannot be vetoed. So now they're starting to put some of those bills through, so they're circumventing the veto power. So they are very active in dismantling and defrauding the public schools, and they will continue to do so. So Save Our Schools watches the legislature, and we support candidates that are pro-public schools and all of that. So what you can do is you can educate people, let them know what's going on. You can be active. I'll send around a sheet. I have a newsletter that goes out every week if you want to sign up for that. If you want to volunteer, I'll put you down on the list. There's a little yes, no, or there's a yes, or maybe later. If you just want to get the newsletter, you can put maybe later, and I'll just put you on my list, and you'll know of when we're doing things. In Marana, we're getting ready to, in May, I'm going to have a meeting with my advocates, and we're going to start a phone bank where we're going to call all the voters that are getting kicked off of the voter registration, because there's a new law in Arizona that if you don't vote in 3 elections, you're kicked off automatically, so you're not registered anymore. And a lot of people don't know that. And so we have in Marana, we're piloting for the whole state in Marana, because the Phoenix schools are busy with the school closure, so they're like, Shelly, you get to be the phone bank. I'm like, all right. So we're going to pilot it down there to tell those voters, hey, you're getting kicked off the rolls. Did you know this? So we're trying to keep disenfranchised voters in. But those are the things you can do. Just get involved. If you want to donate to Save Our Schools, I have a specific, bring it up. I have a little card over there that we can just use a QR code. You can become a recurring donor. We have those things. And just stay informed and tell your people that talk to you about education, that what is going on. You know, my daughter's not politically active at all, and I have to tell her all the time, this is what's going on in your school, okay? This is what you need to understand. You're here, and so then she's like, wow, that's terrible. And I'm like, yes, it is. It's terrible. All right, we have little questions. I can answer questions now if anybody would like to ask me. Yes.
Is this information on your website?
Yes. Okay. Yes, and I am going to send my PowerPoint to Sandy, and she said she'd send it out.
Oh.
And Karen, I'll send it to both.
I can't understand if this is such a money-losing proposition, why all this privatization is interesting. No one's making any money here, so, and everyone's losing.
When it gets privatized, so if you've ever heard of the charter school basis, and that is a privatized school that is run by a corporation, and so they make their money by taking the public school money. And the public school money is not, they don't have any oversight, so they are making money off of public school money because the children that go to basis take their money with them.
I get that, but if the public schools are already losing money before they take that money, how do they think they're going?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Like, we don't make money, we just need money.
They're not doing this for nothing.
Who's not doing it for nothing?
The people who want to privatize the schools.
They're for profit. They're making money. They're making a profit. The private schools and the charter schools are for profit.
Because there's no oversight for that money, so they don't use it all for the tuition. They use it to make a profit and to do things. So.
And public school loses all of that money.
And they push
I get that, but why does anyone want to take money from an organization that's already losing money How can they make money off
Who's
of?
losing money? The public schools?
Right.
But we're federally mandated, we have to provide those services. We're not supposed to make money.
You're not, you're.
Mandated.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you hold your questions again, we've got two other people that would like to talk to us today. We received a call from our Pima County Treasurer, Brian Johnson. He said, can I come and join you and talk to you about the money issues? Because the money goes through his department. He brought his assistant Catherine as well, very knowledgeable in this subject. Catherine, I'm sorry, I forgot your last name. You're in Green Valley. You'll tell us your last name? Okay, so you both want to come up? And then this will give us an opportunity to ask questions of all three.
Well, I'm going to have, my name's Brian Johnson, by the way, and I'm your Pima County Treasurer, and thank you all. Okay, I was kind of hoping that we would have had, so I was kind of hoping that some of our Republican friends would be here, because what I've got to say is going to really enlighten them on something that's really important to them, which is property taxes, which is something that I'm going to talk about. But first, I'd like Catherine to tell you her direct knowledge about vouchers and how they affect the school districts in our county. Now, Catherine works for me. She's my special assistant. I appointed her because the schools are our biggest client, so to speak, in the treasurer's office. We bank, basically, we're the bank for the entire county, for all the county, fire districts, school districts, the county government. And in that responsibility, we see the money and we handle the money for all these different government entities, and the biggest one and the most important one is our school districts. So schools are a big issue in my office, and that's why having Catherine on board with me was very helpful, because of her understanding, and she is also on the governing board of the Marana Unified School District. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about the
So I was elected to the Marana School Board in 2024. I have served for 2 years. I'll be up for re-election in 2028. The way vouchers is affecting our school district is, to get a voucher, you have to fill out an application, and one thing, you get rated. And if you have an IEP, you get rated at a higher level. So we've seen a 35% increase of people coming to us for an evaluation to get rated, who have never attended public schools, are not going to receive services from us, and the average evaluation takes between 90 and 120 hours. So we have to have a speech therapist, an OT, a social worker, a psychologist, a special ed teacher, and a gen ed teacher, all to evaluate one student. And that takes between 90 and 120 hours. That's that money that's coming directly out of our district budget, because we have to, we're mandated under IDEA to evaluate every kid who shows up who lives in our district. They're never going to come to us, but we're going to spend the money and do that evaluation. They're going to go to the private school. They're going to go to the charter school with our evaluation that says they have a learning disability, they have autism, they have a speech impediment, whatever their thing is, they're going to get the highest rating. I have a kid with autism. Out of curiosity, I had my kid rated when he was a senior in high school. He's very high functioning. He graduated 19th in his class. He's a straight A student at U of A. He was rated for $56,000 a year, is what he would have gotten in vouchers, because he had an autism diagnosis. Not what his ability was. Not did he need $56,000 a year of services, because he had an autism diagnosis. We are the #1 state in autism diagnoses. That's what's bankrupting our, and we want the kids that aren't getting services and that need special ed services to get the vouchers to go to special schools. But a lot of those kids, when they go to schools, they come back to us at 121 days of funding. Why 121 days? Full funding has gone to that charter school or that private school. They come back to the public school right before state testing and say, we were kicked out of our private school. And we get not one penny to educate them for 60 days. Yet then you wonder why our class sizes have 36, 37 students. These are the facts. I'm in a district in Marana. We're the largest district in the state in square miles served. Our buses drive 13,000 miles a day to transport our students. We don't get extra money for that. We have the same transportation budget as Flowing Wells has, as Sahuarita has. Every school district gets the same transportation budget. We get nothing extra for the amount of miles we have to drive in Marana. We have an elementary school where 65% of our kids are on an IEP at one school. So we can't fund, that's where the money's going. And we're looking at with the USDA funding shutting down on the free and reduced lunch, we're looking at a 2.1 deficit just to feed our kids this is the only meal they get. And this is just one district. We're looking at a 2.1 million deficit on the free and reduced lunch program for next year. So where do you want me to cut? You want me to cut teacher salaries? You want me to cut aid support? Do you want me to cut the football team? That is absolutely not allowed in Marana, to cut the football team. That's on the chart. That's something that we have to talk about, because that's not a state standard. State standard is only a half day. So any district that gives you full day kindergarten, they're taking on that expense. Your fine arts, none of those are state curriculum. We don't have to provide theater, we don't have to provide band, we don't have to provide drama, we don't have to provide any of those fine arts. Those are the things that you'll see on the chopping blocks, that district. And with Department of Ed closing, we've already been told as a school board, 15% of Title I money is not in the next budget. Title IV budget, 15%. Title II is all gone, and Title III is going to be at 50%. And we're already at 49th in what we fund education. And just so you know, we're 49th, but American Samoa and Puerto Rico funds education higher than Arizona does. Oh, wow. 2 of our territories give more money to education than we do. So that's what you need to be mad about. That's what you need to go talk to your legislators about. That's what you need to call everybody about and say, fund education. Because it's the great equalizer. Education is the equalizer. And if we don't educate, I don't know about you guys, I'm getting older. I want my doctor to be able to spell the name of my medicines correctly. I want them to be able to do the math of what my body weight is and how much medicine I need. I want them to be able to do these things. I want to get the correct change when I go and pay for something. You know, these are the things I expect, because I've been told by many of our legislators that I shouldn't be asking for more funding, because I need to understand we are a retirement state. And if I want an education for my child, I should move to Iowa. So that's what we are fighting against. That's what we're fighting against. So these are your property tax dollars, and Brian's going to talk about how we collect those and spend them.
All right, so what do the school districts do to make up for this $1 billion that is leaving, that is not going to our public schools? How do they make up for it? Well, what they do is they ask you for the money. The school districts ask you for the money. And what they do is they have a secondary property tax for what they call a budget override. And they're allowed by law to ask you to pay in your property taxes so much money. So this is really, in many ways, a transfer of taxes that should be coming from the state that are coming now on your property tax bill. You go, we're in Sahuarita here, Sahuarita Unified School District. Look on your property tax bill. You'll be getting a new statement in September, which will have my name on it. And you're going to see, go down that list of all the things that you're paying property tax for. And when you see Sahuarita Unified School District Secondary, that's the school district getting money from you so that they can keep themselves alive. And they can continue to keep the doors open on their schools. Now, Pima County's been fairly lucky that every single one of our school districts now, since Sunnyside, they passed a they passed a secondary property tax for a budget override in 2023. They were the last school district in Pima County that got one, basically. So I want you to understand that this is all coming back to you. And you're paying for this $1 billion that the state is giving away to these private people. And with that, if anybody has questions for all of us, if you'd like to answer.
I am being asked for donations to keep my great-grandchildren's programs going in their school in Phoenix. I've also been approached by a school in the reservation, made a sizable donation to them so they can have a music club. So those of us that are taxpayers being done in several different ways, and it sounds to me like this money going to private schools is, a lot of it sounds pretty criminal.
There's no, it's comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. School districts, our fiduciary responsibility is we're annually audited. We have to account for every penny. The private schools, they don't. There's no audits, there's no accountability. We are required to hire highly qualified certified teachers. You might get a teacher at a charter school that has a high school diploma or a college degree. Maybe. I mean, I know of a couple at one of the Lehmans that don't have high school diplomas and are teaching.
I thought I heard that you could teach in Arizona on a...
You can get emergency certifications. You can be deemed an expert in your field and get an emergency certification. So, it's very frustrating.
If that wasn't bad enough news, I want to share this with you. The Republicans are running a worse candidate against Tom Horn, who is the current superintendent of schools in Arizona.
Wow.
They are running.
How can you get worse?
It is. Jake Hoffman runs the Arizona Freedom Caucus in Arizona. They're running against him because they were concerned Horn was going to defund some of these voucher systems. So they're going from far right to extremely far right. So make sure when you vote for a Democrat on the public education, or you're going to be in an even worse situation.
This is for Shelley. I spend a lot of time in the rural communities, Graham, Dale, Frida, and that. This has really impacted them. They don't have any private school. There's no private school in Frida.
No.
So, what I hear when I go there, how
Just talking about
it's
how
devastating for the rural community.
rural communities are just, they get devastated because their kids aren't even eligible to go because there's no private schools down there, but they still monies are coming out of there, and it's devastating rural areas, and school closures are happening a lot down there, and large class sizes, because you have to close a school in order to keep this other school open. So this is like, okay, we're going to keep this school open, so we have to close this school. And when my school closed, 600 kids had to go to other schools, and that increased the class sizes within the other schools' district. So they had to be farmed out and done, and it's just like this, avalanche that never gets better. So yeah.
Isn't that a drain also on the busing, the cost of getting these kids to... Yeah, so it's majorly trickling down in a flood of costs that...
Well, that's one way private schools and charter schools become profitable is they don't provide transportation where public schools are required to. So they don't have to eat that budget, you just have to get your kid to that school.
Who are the Democrats running?
Or
Against Horn?
against Horn, I don't know if anybody's come out yet to run against Tom
They're
Horn.
not yet.
It's a little early for his election.
You should run.
No, we have people coming out from state senate and stuff, yeah, somebody's gonna announce soon, but we just haven't heard a name yet. It's a little early for that.
This is not a question, but I think people should understand that the very first president to call for the Department of Education to be abolished was Ronald Reagan. And his cabinet was filled with millionaires, like we have a billionaire cabinet now. They did not want their children going to school with blacks. And so it was desegregation that started this attack. And public education has been in trouble since Ronald Reagan. You take the money away, and then people say, well, I don't want my kid going to that bad school. We're public school educators. We saw what happened.
Yeah, it was desegregation of LA's school system, and they were busing all the rich white kids from Beverly Hills to Watts and Compton.
Exactly. It started in the 80s with a Republican president.
I'm kind of curious, how many state legislators are also involved in private schools?
Financially, a lot. They would all have financial interests in it.
Yeah, I think a lot of them are on boards or on committees or even part of schools, have started it.
Can I address the whole thing, what people still don't understand, why they're trying to get rid of public schools? Public schools have been around for almost 150 years. They were established so we could have an educated electorate. Guess what? The Republicans and MAGA do not want an educated electorate. They want information voters voting for them. They listened to what that idiot said, and they believed him. Anyone that has a brain would have searched and seen that he was lying. They don't want public schools. They want dumb voters that they can convince to do whatever they want.
To your point about your daughter living, I mean, why wasn't something going around? Parents were voting, and they voted last year. Why weren't people going to CTAs in various school districts and saying, this is what these vouchers are doing to you? Did anybody do that?
They're trying.
Now, but parents vote, don't they?
I'll tell you, most people that have a special needs kid rely on the Medicaid system. Whether they're on Medicaid or not, they rely on the system because it does do some reimbursement for DDD for them to get their in-home services. But there's also reimbursements to the schools. Even if you're not on Medicaid, if you're on an IEP, you fill out the Medicaid reimbursements, the districts get to bill back to Medicaid for these services that they're providing in an educational setting. So all these parents that are so up in arms about, they're cutting this, they're cutting that, I can't believe, I voted for Trump, he didn't say he was going to do this. Yes, he did. He told us they voted against their own self-interest, and now they're surprised that their kid with autism isn't going to get what they need. And I have a kid with autism. I served on the Autism Society for 10 years. I get it. I don't have much sympathy for him. Because if you had just done any kind of research or listened to any of the forums where all of us were screaming, you can't vote for this guy, he's going to hurt your kid. They didn't believe it was going to happen. Now they're finding out it's going to happen because your kids are getting pushed out of the charter schools and the private schools because they do not provide those services in those settings. When we have a diagnosis rate in the state of Arizona of 1 in 37 get diagnosed with autism. You have 1 in every classroom. You need an aide in every classroom. And I've got a school in Marana that's got a 65% group of kids on IEPs for the total population.
Let's not villainize the kids with IEPs.
No.
Okay.
It's not the kids' fault at all, but we are mandated as a public school. We have to provide services where charters and private schools do not. And they keep the kid to 120 days, and then they quietly, nicely say, we can't provide you those services. You need to go back to your home school on day 121. When we'll get no funding for that kid for the remaining school year till day 180.
Is one of the potential power things to get on the board, get on the education board?
You can get on, governing boards would be great. We need lots of candidates. Your governing board here in Sahuarita, I think, is a 3-2 split Republican, but it's non-partisan, but I think you have a 3-2 split in Sahuarita.
I would ask that we just have one other question, and I'm sure our speakers will be here after the meeting to address individuals, but we'll just take one other question.
I just wanted to announce that there is a Democrat that has filed taking an interest in public education.
Can't hear you, Judy, what did you say?
Oh, there is a Democrat that has filed a statement of interest for public school education against Longhorn.
Oh,
He
good.
filed in February 15th.
Oh, she just hasn't gotten out there and formally kicked off her campaign yet.
Another question.
What happens if Project 25 models Arizona, I mean, they're obviously putting it up as a model of, if we all become privatized, if all this, ultimately, if all schools become privatized, what happens to the kids that get kicked out, or what is the ultimate goal? What happens if we privatize the school system?
It would be basis, like the charter school basis, and if you can get your child there, they'll take you, but if you're disenfranchised and you're poor and you can't get to school.
So what happens to those kids?
They don't go.
If there's no longer a public school?
They don't go to school.
They won't have school.
But there is in our state constitution a requirement for the state to educate the children. There has to be something unless we totally throw the Arizona Constitution.
Well, all states must have that, right?
Yeah.
To educate their kids.
They don't have a plan for what happens after the privatization.
Yeah, I got to take both